Well, howdy folks, old Buster coming to you again. The story I got for you this evening is about the Air Corps. Now this is about the time, of course, the boys graduate from high school, and in between them and all these other stories is coming up a little bit later on. But I want to tell you something about this story, about the old Air Corps. Went in there, 7 Southern boys, the rest of them was all Yankees. Nothing against them, but all Yankees. And we had a little bit of a time with them. But there's one old boy I got pretty close to. His name was Bernard Francis Flint. And called him Skip now. Didn't know that. Have to tell I found him after 47 years of looking for him. He married up an English gal, little gal, pretty face, Sandy Bayless. Sweet gal. They're both just dear people to us. I love him like a brother. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for old Skip. And this story doesn't have a lot about him in there because during the time that I was in the service, when we were in basic training, we did some things in there that was good, but we don't need to talk about it. But anyhow, point being is that they took me out for 3 weeks and put me into some kind of testing. Didn't know where they took me. Day and night, just test. In the meantime, they shipped the other boys on out. And later I went on to England and so forth, and during the Vietnam thing. But this is a little bit about some of the story when I was in England. And I'm sorry to say Skipper wasn't with me, but he had a pretty sister named Caroline. That's all I can tell you. But anyhow, old Skip is from Hibbing, Minnesota. And if he's seeing this, I just want him to know love the boy dearly and I hope he's doing well. And he lives in Lakeville, Minnesota now. And like I said, it took 47 years to find the boy. Me and Lulu found him, stopped at a steakhouse to meet him and his wife. I cried like a baby. I ain't ashamed to say it. He's a good feller. Love him dearly. Anyway, the Air Corps. Broke down like a cheap shotgun he was. Weren't trying to learn that there roller skating and that there newfangled skateboarding. Buster was plumb tuckered out, wore to a frazzle. Well, Buster's roommate was Goose, Martin Maurice Greenberg. Now, I hadn't seen him in years, and I'm using his name because it's true. The boy's from Charleston, South Carolina. Now, his mama done sent him to that man-eating thing on wheels, and Buster just could not get the hang of him. He was banged up right smart and bruised all over his carcass, and hurting was putting it mighty politely. Well, Buster told Goose to have at it, and he was a-going to the chow hall. Now, Buster got to eat 4 times a day, you know. They plumb starved the boy down. He was caved in so terrible bad that he didn't have no energy to pull the rope at fog call. Well, that's when you have a rope to lead the way when the fog come in so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. They blow the horn on the base to let everybody know to get on inside. You couldn't go in or off the base. Buster done got called up to the Air Corps and got shipped out to England. Now, not England where they come from, but England over to the water. Like I say, not where he was from, the one overseas there. They spelled the same, though. I want to let you know that. Anyhow, Buster went on in to eat, and he got his in regular 4 servings of everything. The doctor had to sign some papers to the colonel to get him fed. He got his in dozen scrambled eggs, pound of bacon, pound of butter on his and loaf of bread, a half a gallon of sweet milk, a half a gallon of chocolate milk, generous helpings of SOS, some ketchup, cup of joe, a smoke, and he was fitting to kill. Had that twice a day at 6 a.m. breakfast and 12 midnight. That day he had 4 chickens plus all the trimmings for supper and bologna sandwiches for dinner. Now, Buster was always on the lookout for them 2 Pollock boys. They's meaner than a snake. Always a-wanting to tussle since they found out Buster was half Czech on his mama's side. Well, Buster ambled on into the Airman's Club and got himself a little snort and see they had a new nickel slot machine. He didn't have nothing better to do, so he took his and change and put in a few nickels. Lo and behold, he done hit the jackpot. Buster ain't never gambled like that kind of gambling with no machines before. Nickels was a-going every which place. Well, he bought around for the boys there and then went on back to his barracks, right smack dab in the middle of a Brussels sprout patch. He couldn't stand to eat 'em or smell 'em, just hated the dang things. Not as bad as liver, though, and beets tasted like dirt to him. Buster wasn't working that evening, so him and an Alabama feller decided to go into town. Well, they side-fodled into a couple of pubs and shot some darts and jawed with the folks for a bit. Then went to the bowling alley where the 300 Club was at. Now, the jukebox was a thing then. Real bands was dime a dozen. Buster done seed them Beagles and Nashville Teens and Herman and the Hermits and a bunch more of them fellers that got famous later on. They got pretty well oiled up there, and since it was getting late, they decided to hitch a ride back to the base. As luck would have it, they got lost as a goose. They gone about for a spell trying to get their direction straight, and all of a sudden, heard some laughing going on. Well, Buster and Wayne Breedlove, the feller he was with, headed off in the direction to come up on a big old wrought iron fence. On the other side was a passel of gals, like you'd never seed. Pretty as all get out, I'm a-telling you. Well, Buster, being a talker and all, got to spinning a yarn or two with this and one gal and decided he'd have to have a closer look-see. Up over that fence he went. Told old Wayne to come on over, and he clumb it too. Well, those two boys was a hit with them from the South and American to boot. They got right cozy with one, and the one they liked, and was a-making a date with two of the gals when lights come on, and some woman dressed up like some kind of witch come out hollering for 'em to get on out of there. Well, the boys kissed the gals and lit on out up over that fence quicker than an alley cat. Now here's the part that gets a wee bit exciting. The gals in what they was called a convent. Now Buster done took up with this and gal Hannah Phelps, and made it up with her to see her again. Don't know if Wayne ever seed his'n or not. Well, a day or two went by, and that colonel at the base didn't cotton much to Buster nohow, had brung him up by the APs. Seems like Buster done hooked up with the ambassador to Spain's daughter, Hannah Phelps. She took a shine to Buster and done got her daddy to go fetch Buster for a visit. Boy, caused quite a stir, I tell you. Boy, that colonel was a-busting the gut, he is so mad at Buster. But Buster didn't pay him no never mind. That ambassador was way up higher the ladder than that rabbit-chasing colonel. Always a-drinking in that crazy. Well, Buster got a ride in that big black fancy car and went on into town and had a right nice time of visiting there. Well, Hannah wouldn't hear none of it about Buster not being able to come back, so she got her daddy to fix that up with the general or somebody or another. Next time they was a-going to visit her grandma somewhere or another. He didn't rightly know where, but he wanted to go. Well, Buster got on back to the base that evening, and that dang colonel called him back up again the next afternoon. Seems as though the general done had a few words for that colonel, and they had something sure enough in store for Buster. Well, they done got Buster all gussied up in new clothes that he ain't never seen before, and then had a feller come in to train Buster into what they call the West Point eating manners and dancing. Not the kind Buster he was used to, that's for sure. Buster had to learn bowing and who to talk to and who not to talk to, the nuttiest thing he ever did see. Well, they sent for Buster in that big shiny black car, and off they went, just to knowing that colonel was a cussing a blue streak. Come to find out, it upset his whole day. Well, that's fine with Buster. Well, Buster and Hannah went to see her grandma, but not alone. Never was alone, you know. Always some folks were going on, what they call chaperones. Buster always got on with old folks, babies, and critters, so him and Grandma hit it right off. It was warm over there for folks. Fell out about a heat stroke 70 degrees, but made for a nice evening, you know. Well, Buster and Hannah run off around some hedges, and she planted a smooch on old Buster that purely took his breath away. Said she wanted to see Buster some more if and he cottoned to the ID. Well, sure enough, said Buster, and she said she'd fix it with her daddy so Buster could come any time. Seems like her daddy done checked out Buster and his family that come from England, which Buster knowed and was royalty too, just like hers. Buster said he didn't know nothing about all that, but his and Great Aunt Gertrude had a book on it called We Tiptons and Our Kin. She said her daddy told Buster's family went back further than theirs and they had a castle over there summers. Might be fun to visit some of his people, Buster said, but he didn't know none of them by name. Fact is, he never laid eyes or even heard of them. Told her thanks for the info, though. Them two done all manner of things and had one heck of a good time for the most part. The fancy stuff and a prancing and a parading around wasn't to Buster's liking, as well as not having any real sparking time alone with her neither. Well, Hannah and Buster had a real good time with each other and become fast friends. But it just wasn't to be. She was from another life, and so Buster and the two just didn't fit. Fun for a while, and each of them got to see another side of life, but their raising didn't allow that kind of mingling for very long. They parted friends and was glad they came into each other's life. Of course, that colonel was having a fit. He wanted to know everything going on. Well, Buster told him he wasn't going back. Boy, howdy did that colonel pop a cork. Didn't do him no good, though, 'cause the ambassador done fixed it up real good with the general and somebody at the White House, they said. The ambassador done told him about his and folks and how good a feller he was, and Buster was a real good example of American. Buster even got a letter from him in the Air Corps. Well, Buster done got some other letters since he done saved those other boys' lives. Didn't seem much like to Buster, though, just the thing to do. Well, one evening there's a dance. What they was to bring was a busload of gals from round about the countryside to a dance and visit the fellers at the base at the Airmen's Club. Now, the Negro boys would tell the gals they was American Indian. Of course they wasn't, and all the gals took all their money to payday. Goes to show you not to tell no tales, that's lies. Well, as the night wore on and it was getting on towards morning, they called for the gals to board back on the bus to go on back home. Well, Buster and Wayne hooked up again and was having a good old time talking to two of the gals and walked them to the bus. They stayed a bit longer than the rest of the boys, and come to find out, the bus driver done got himself all liquored up and was passed out colder than a wedge. Well, them gals got plumb fractious. Started to caterwauling and carrying on about getting home and crying and carrying on. Well, Buster done up and said he'd drive them on back. Wayne just said, I'll saddle up and go with you, and they were going to take the gals back. Wayne said, can you drive this thing, Buster? Buster told him, said he could drive anything on wheels that could float or fly. Well, Buster done got Reggie's two-seater Champ and learned to fly the thing by the seat of his and britches out on the farm back in Arkansas. And that's another story coming, folks, before this one, of course. That part of the farm had some sand, and it made a right nice runway, and Buster used to hop and skip that dang airplane all over the place till he got the hang of it. Grandpa Gus just said, don't kill yourself or tear up the road for harvest. Well, Reggie was his neighbor, next farm over. Reggie got snockered and was a buzzing the airport over in Memphis, and the FAA took his pilot's license, so he let Buster have the Champ. Well, Buster put her into grandma gear and took off. Didn't jerk at all. Buster kind of got the hang of driving on the wrong side of the road after a bit and learning the gears. Their roads was a mite narrow, but he could handle the bus just fine. The gals all took off their dresses and hung them up and just sat around in their underwear and slips on. Danged if Buster and Wayne didn't fall in and come out smelling like a rose. They was in hog heaven with all them gals a sashaying around them scantily clad. They was riding along with the gals, giving directions, and all of a sudden the gear shift come plumb out of the transmission. The bus had a stick shift in the floor, and that was something Buster knowed all about, you know. Just slipped a cotter pin is all. Well, Buster hollered at Wayne to come on back up front, 'cause he was a spooning that gal and he locked in the back of the bus. Well, Wayne and most of the gals come up around Buster and was all concerned like. Well, Buster told them not to worry, he could make it work and fix it and get them all home in fine feather. Buster told Wayne to stick the gear shift back in the hole in the transmission and to keep it pushed in whilst he shifted. Then Buster took off and told Wayne to hold her nude, I'm a double clutching. What a ride. She got to be smooth sailing for a spell till they come to a little town. The gals told Buster to keep on going through the town, but them streets got narrower and narrower. Buster got her stuck on a little side street and had to stop. There was a little pub right up the street, so he done told all the gals to get on out and stretch for a spell, and Buster and Wayne would buy them all something to eat and drink. Feller that run the place was closing up, but stayed open till they was all done eating and drinking and the gals going to the ladies' room and all. Well, Buster pulled Wayne off the side and told him he was a figuring to do. Wayne said, okay, let's do it. They piled back in on that bus, and spirits was a bit better since eating and drinking and going to the outhouse. Now, Buster fired her up and said for Wayne to hold her in. Well, Buster took off like a house afire. He done scraped off both sides of them mirrors and knocked over a bunch of trash cans, but got that bus unstuck and out on the main road again. Well, round about daylight, the gals that was still awake said they was only about 20 miles away from home. Gas was good and she was running smooth, so they was good to go. Or to make it there to their town about time the town folk was beginning to stir. Sure enough, they pulled into town and the gals' mamas and daddies and the mayor and all come out to meet them. They was all a-hugging and a-kissing and a-shaking iron hands and said we was heroes. Well, Buster and Wayne weren't no heroes. They just wanted a little adventure and be with the gals, plus they was good boys and couldn't leave no women in distress, you know. Well, the gals, Wayne was from Alabama. Well, the gals' folks, the ones they liked, took them home and fed them and put them up for 3 days. Well, Buster and Wayne just knowed they was a pickle being AWOL and all, and was trying to figure out how to get out of this here little predicament. Danged if and all the town folks didn't sign a letter to the colonel, and the mayor called him up and told him how proud he was that they rescued their gals and that they was heroes. The colonel got Buster on the phone and told him to catch the first train to London and there'd be somebody to fetch him there at the station. Well, Buster and Wayne said their goodbyes and left on out and finally got back to the base. Now that colonel was madder'n a wet hen and was about to bust a gut, I tell you. He fussed and cussed and paced his in office till Buster thought he'd wear a hole in the floorboards. He threatened Buster with his in life, and all the time Buster was a-grinning from ear to ear. Buster done had him again. 'Twarn't nothing he could do about their little jaunt into the countryside, 'cause it done got back to the top brass and they was heroes of the day. His a-fuming and a-ranting was surely going to drive him to an early grave. The colonel was just about to pop his in buttons when a phone call come in and wanted the colonel to give Buster and Wayne a commendation medal. That tore it, I'd say. Run them out of there a-spitting and a-spewing. Next roll call, they got their medals and a 3-day pass. Now that 3-day pass was something for sure. A bunch of the fellers got drunk and lost and ended up in some section of London called Soho. They got a room for the night and piled in there 'cause money was scarce. One feller, little Ronnie Millard, he'd fight a circle saw but never won, was with them and a-sleeping. Somebody put a towel over a lamp and caught the place afire. Well, Buster and Wayne done come in from finding some milk and something to eat and got all the fellers out of there. Guess the fire department done come 'cause bells was a-ringing and they was a-running. Well, Buster's Grandpa Gus could speak 7 languages and taught Buster just enough of them to get him into trouble. Buster done seed this here Dutch gal and rattled off something his and Grandpa Gus told him in French. The gal was a pretty gal, but a big un. She tackled old Buster in a coal bin and went to jabbering something and a-hugging and a-kissing him. Well, it was all Buster could do to get her off of him. When he did, he run like a turpentine cat. He seed one of them Bobby police and asked him how the devil to get out of this place. Oh, me. Well, Buster met up with the other fellers at the train station to go on back to the base. They was all wore down after all them shenanigans, and all of them got some shut-eye on the way back. Well, Buster left a bag at the train station for some reason and told this feller his name was Wilbur Zilch. Just popped into his mind, I reckon. Well, a feller went to get his bag and all. The rest of the boys was a-hooting and a-hollering, about to fall out laughing so hard with tears in their eyes. The funny thing is, come to find out, the attendant feller shouted out, "Zilch, Wilbur Zilch," and some feller come running. If and that don't beat all. That's just as true as there ever was, too. True story. But the attendant feller recognized Buster and give him his bag. The boys didn't go back to town for a spell after that. Got a little serious after the war, and all Buster done received his own orders one night. Tipton, AF-18710-512, report for duty, U.S. Army, north parallel of the DMZ, mobile comm vans. Buster said, "Dang, I'm in the Air Corps, not the Army, but so goes life, and Buster can now write another chapter in his life." Nice thing for Christmas that year was the cookies the Ollinger gals, Mary Gale and Carla May, made up and sent him. Well, it might have been his grandma too, and maybe Skip's sister Caroline, can't rightly remember. Kind of broke up, but they was real good. Walter and Jesse and Hired hadn't joined up as yet, and the way it was going, they might not have to go. Pretty sorry state of affairs over there, and nothing like you'd think. Glad they is all safe and sound, and Buster said he'd do his part and theirs too if it keeps him out of there. Anyhow, that's another story. And we still got the time Buster done got himself a little English Ford Anglia, and he and a feller named Smitty roamed the countryside in it. Well, we'll do some more visiting after Sunday dinner on the ground. That's old Buster signing off. Have a blessed day.